Steve Jobs said the most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. And today's guest, Jack Dyer, is one of those voices who knows how to turn storytelling into strategy that drives tangible results. Jack, how you doing today? Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. What an amazing intro. Yeah, quoting, being on the same podcast as someone who quotes Steve Jobs. I'm honored. Thank you.
Well, I've been looking forward to this, Jack, and I love this platform and the podcast because here I am bright and early over here in the States in Philadelphia and talking to you over there in the UK. I love how this brings people from different places together. So, like I said, I'm really looking forward to it. And with that, would you mind doing a brief introduction of yourself?
Of course, yeah. Well, I'm Jack Dyer. I was a career designer all my life, 9 to 5 job, while also having a deep sort of striving for something more, something that I could call my own, something entrepreneurial. And I suppose we'll get more into the past in a bit, but for now at least, I run Storytold, which is I hesitate to use the word agency because that puts us in the same boat as a lot of other people, but we are a creative digital storytelling company, a team, a very small team, who help business owners and founders tell their story more authentically on LinkedIn and beyond, on their website, through any marketing, any branding. But the keyword there is authenticity. Like, we help people actually connect with what's real to them and communicate that to others. And in doing so, as you rightly said, create these meaningful, genuine connections. Here we are, talking across the pond, which wouldn't have been possible even before COVID. So yeah, it's a wonderful thing, and storytelling brings that all together.
It's awesome, Jack, and that's what actually your LinkedIn. That's what got me to kind of connect with you and reach out because obviously with the podcast, with my own journey, LinkedIn, I definitely uh, I have a few books that I've written, writing a book now. So storytelling is a big thing to me. And I really, really enjoy that aspect. And I think the biggest word that you just said there was authenticity. And that's what I'm looking for here, a real authentic, honest conversation. So again, thank you. Oh, with that, I got a few segments here, some questions we'll get through. Goal here will be to really give people something that they can take away from this, and I think that you definitely will do that. So, in this first segment here, we're going to talk a little bit about the truth about websites. So, I noticed on LinkedIn, and I think this is one thing that jumped right out to me. You're very direct in your messaging. So, why do so many websites fail to do the one job they're supposed to do?
I think people get sucked into this trap of making as much like content for the sake of content as possible, both on LinkedIn and on the websites. And the website problem is huge. It's something that effectively, if you pick up a tabloid newspaper, right, on the front page, you've got like the scandal stories, the shock factor, you've got a bunch of other articles, you've got the headline, you've got all the things at the bottom, and there's just too much information. There's decision fatigue. You're looking at it, you're overwhelmed, you're like, you don't really know what's going on. You, as the user, as the viewer, have to decipher what's going on, and you almost have to like treat it like a little puzzle before you can actually take in the message. You have to wade through so much stuff first before then the real thing comes through. Every company, every website seems to do the same. We've taken all of our inspiration from print advertising and we've just sort of dumped it onto the web. But that doesn't work because every website is turning into this big sort of blend of noise, and it's just shouting about features and services and prices and results and all these like various things that people really on a deep subconscious level don't care about. We think we do. We look at it and we think, oh, this is nice. Everyone needs to know how important my service is, but they don't. They don't care about it. What they care about is a connection, an emotional connection. If you go on a website, you want to feel something. You don't know that you want to feel something, but you do. Like the biggest proponent of being able to feel something and have that connection is that the company is keeping things simple, authentically speaking about what they do in a way that can help others. There's sort of like a three-part formula. Being authentic, sharing something that can help others without thinking of yourself, and making it clear, making it concise and simple. And that's something that most websites just fail to do. So Storytold is kind of here to combat that.
Yeah, I think what you just said there too, and I know for me being a little older now, and I'm somewhat technical. I'm not extremely technical, but like I know for I think of like my own father who is not technical at all, right? In his 70s. I think when he sees a website, a lot of people fall into this. I think the simpler the better because it's just with the way technology is nowadays and it's so much going on. I think sometimes our minds almost need that break and it needs to really get right to down to it and give the message it's meant to give. I think that's really really good advice. So what are some of the most common mistakes that solo founders, small businesses make when it comes to the home pages on their websites?
I think that the biggest one that I've seen, the biggest crime, is the idea of the above the fold. That's it is again a legacy term from newspapers, and people believe they have to shove in everything to be above the fold. And this is this invisible line on a screen where, of course, on a newspaper it would have been the fold of the newspaper before you can only see what's on the top, and then you pick it up and you reveal the rest underneath. But on the website, it's that invisible line at the bottom of your screen. So, of course, nowadays everyone scrolls. We've become so used to, ever since the tying it back to Steve Jobs, the 2007 with the iPhone and that's like seamless scroll experience. We've just gotten used to doing this. So, or I should say, sort of swiping up like this. But it's this idea that the biggest crime is that people shove all their information into the very top of the screen and they forget about the rest of the experience. Whereas if you keep something simple, you can even lead with a bit of mystery. You can have something that's super clean, super minimalist, and just has a little scroll prompt and says, okay, well, scroll down to find out more. You can then do that. People are used to doing that. So, yeah, anyone listening to this, if you're building a website, if your website isn't getting you any clients, and I can almost guarantee it isn't because it's probably too complicated, just simplify, keep things really clean, even use a bit of mystery, and just have trust in your audience that they will scroll down your website to find out more, and don't try and put everything in the top above the fold section.
Jack, it's interesting that you said that because I notice even for I'll use LinkedIn as the example. I know I've been trying to use this formula, I'll say, for the last 3 years is, it's that first kind of sentence or so, right? You make it like, having it something that people go, oh, I wonder what the rest of this is about. And then they expand and read because, I think what you said there, you can't I just think visually and our brains, we just can't take it all in at once anyway. So it's almost like we need to have it spaced out more. I think again, that's really, really solid advice. And you mentioned the scroll. I can only imagine what you and folks like you trying to teach companies how to do these websites when you have to deal now with you have the home screen on the computer, you have the home screen on the phone, you have the iPad. Yeah, so it starts to get complicated without regardless of where we start to have the data and what the pages look like, the technology alone starts to take it in different directions. So yeah, I think keeping it simple, sound advice. I
For
guess
sure.
though, how do you, and I know this probably to me would be the hard part if I was in your shoes, how do you convince the business owners that the design of the website, it's not about the look and it being pretty, so to speak. It's about the performance.
That is a wonderful question, and I've genuinely not been asked that before, so I appreciate that. The biggest way to sort of counter the design, like almost people have these preconceived ideas of what the design should be. When we present the design, we go through this whole process, and it starts with like the brand discovery, understanding everything about yourself and your company, and pulling out those insights. That we do it in conversations like this. We like get to the nitty gritty of, okay, but why does your company exist? What's your reason? What's your purpose? You're not just here to make money, you're here to do a thing and serve people. What is that? And we pull that out. Once we've got that, we can then redirect the focus away from the visuals and make people see, actually, yeah, it doesn't matter really what it looks like. It needs to focus on my why and help me communicate in an authentic way. We then guide them down this path through these creative concepts and this brand discovery process. And then once we've nailed that foundation, it's like building a house. If you build your house on sand, then it's going to fall apart. We use the solid bricks, the foundation of who you are as a person, and that should always be the case. We help you build your business based on your personality. You're not just running your own company in disalignment or misalignment with who you are. It needs to be connected to who you are. So we help you find that. It almost sounds a bit like not quite therapy, but like coaching in a way. Like we help people realize actually there's so much more beyond the surface of websites. If you wanted a website that just looked good, you could go on Fiverr or Upwork or freelance websites, and you'd get someone charging through the nose for a nice visual. That's it. That's all it does. But there's no soul. There's no heart. So we help sort of redirect that focus and help business owners see beyond just the surface of the visuals.
I love in that answer how you touched on the humanity of it. I think that's fantastic. And, already as we're talking here, that what you said there is going to stick with me. We build it based on the bricks, the foundation of who you are. Jack, I think that statement is just important, not just in web design. I think that's probably a life motto. The bricks of who we are. I really like that. That was a great answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
This next segment, I wanted to touch a little bit on psychology, the user experience, the UX, and why that actually converts. So you go deep into understanding customer psychology. What are you looking for when you're studying user behavior?
As in, it depends entirely on the context. Like, give me an example of say, for a website or for LinkedIn.
Yeah, both.
Perfect. So yeah, so really we look for this match. Think of a Venn diagram. You've got what the company is good at on one side, what the users need on the other. And usually they don't match up. There's this sort of empty void in the middle where companies are trying to communicate in one way and the users are sort of trying to receive that information in another way, but it doesn't quite match. So we try and help companies to communicate in a way that people actually want and need, and then ultimately we're looking for that connection, that mesh, to come together and have that messaging that people aren't. They're not just like, I'm going to try and use another metaphor again, but they're not just throwing the messaging over the wall and seeing what lands the other side. Because when you're throwing something over a wall, you're doing it blind. You can't tell who's on the other side of that wall. We help companies to see the users. We invite the users round to our side of the wall. We get involved in like user testing, and ultimately, it's an interesting one because it combines that visual aspect of. We get users to test our prototypes, our wireframes. We make like grey boxes on a page and move them about a bit, and like we get the messaging and the why communicated in different parts of the page, and we see if it resonates when people are using it. But we also help companies understand why that's important. Like we throwing it over the wall is the old method. It's kind of like the build it and they will come mentality. And that doesn't really work anymore. We have to invite the customers in first to be part of the building process. And then once they're involved and they're through the door, they can help create it with the company. So yeah, a big part of our process that I sort of left out earlier is the user testing aspect. We want to make sure that we help the companies to understand the users, and then the users can understand how the companies want to serve them, and then everything sort of increases together.
Yeah, I'm enjoying this conversation because even for me, like thinking about it, I never think about what really goes into it or what should go into it. It seems like you see a website, and I'm sure probably that's because a lot of it's done improperly now, but you kind of see a website, you don't think about this other stuff. You said something else there too about throwing the messaging over the wall and you don't know what lands. I would also add to that sometimes if you throw something over the wall, you might break a couple windows. So you could do
Yeah,
damage, and that first impression, you don't have a chance to make a second. So I think what you're doing is really important, and I hope that people that listen, they reach out and take advantage of your expertise. Um, so how do you help clients uncover or define their business whys in a way that actually drives conversions? Because I think for me, if you came to me, I'd say, great, Jack, this is my why. But you know what? My why, if it's not converting into sales or opportunity for sales, I don't know if it's important. So, how do you convince them?
that is a really good question as well. Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember the first part of the question there as well. Was it that run me by that first part again? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going off on a tangent on that. But how do, how do you help them define their why, but then convince them that, it's gonna they want it to convert to sales or to money ultimately.
Yeah, for sure. So the first part of like how to convince them to define their why, that's surprisingly difficult. It comes through like these natural conversations. We have like a 2 hour consultation at the start of any process, and it's a very in-depth process of like understanding your brand personality, your tone of voice, different elements. We've got like a sliding scale. Like, do you want to communicate in a really traditional or modern way? And then also, as a curveball, couple of questions like who would care? Like if you put something out into the world, who would care about it? We're quite blunt, and we ask those blunt questions to make people think, oh yeah, if I communicate like this, no one would care. That's right. So how do I change that? Like, why do you get out of bed in the morning? You know what? And why should anyone care about what you do? Like, how would you make them understand that what you do is important? And if the company, if the founder struggles to answer those questions, then we kind of help them reframe their why into a way that makes sense for their users. Because as you rightly said, like we don't want to get into the starving artist approach where I'm going to create a load of stuff and I'm going to put it out there, but no one's going to give a monkeys about it. I think that's the key is that it has to align. So ultimately, there's a big way that we take this back to basics, and it's we get the business owner to think what they wanted to be when they were a child. We ask them interesting questions to think, well, when you were a kid, like, did you want to be an F1 driver, a ballerina? Did you want to be a space cowboy? What was it? And ultimately, no matter what their answer is, somewhere in there, we pull out the strands of, okay, well, what's your career path from there to here? Like you've gone from A to B, sorry, A to Z. You're now at Z, but what are all the other letters in between? Like how linear was it? Did you jump around a lot? And in that we find the story. And then in the story, we create those, we make loads of notes about it. We create loads of ideas for LinkedIn posts and website content. And somewhere in all of that will be the hidden resonance from customers. Like we all have an individual journey, but we all share elements of the story. And the users, the visitors to the website, the customers, they will always find things that they can resonate with on someone's journey. So that's the part that connects. That's the way we turn someone's, even if it is a starving artist story to begin with, we turn that into money because we position it in a way that makes sense for other people. It's hard to explain, but hopefully that makes sense.
No, it does make sense because,
Yeah.
to me, that's when I think at it from, I personally, I think I fall more as a creative person, but for my professional career, I think when I mixed the two, well, how does my creative side translate to making money ultimately or doing what needs to be done for my company? So no, I think you explained it really well. And I think I mean, God, I think it's so important. I think that that the work you're doing is really, really important for people. If there was, and I know there's probably a lot of things, but if in your experience, if you could tell people one thing that they could fix today that would improve the effectiveness of their websites immediately, what would that be?
strip it down to a blank page, just a plain white background or black background page, and just have one sentence in the middle. And this is obviously the starting point, but you have to go back to the basics and then build up from there. Get rid of all the fluff, get rid of all the marketing speak, every single word that doesn't need to be there, just get rid of it. And imagine you've got a completely blank slate and you just have one sentence to tell people what you do and why you do it. That's it. And then once you get people to really think about that, they then it puts them under pressure. It does shine that spotlight on them and go, oh Christ, yeah, like how do I actually then do this? If they can figure that out in just one sentence, then perfect. If they can't, they need more work until it gets down to that point. I can't remember which famous law it was, but like the idea of if you can't explain something in a really simple way, then it's too complicated. You need to simplify it. So, for example, me, if Storytold's website was a completely blank slate and I just had one boring old sort of Times New Roman or Arial text sentence in the middle, it would say, "We help founders tell their story and delight their clients with authentic visual storytelling." That's it. Yeah, that's mine.
That's and it's funny. I was thinking about this question before our interview, and I don't know what I expected, but and in a very good way. I wasn't expecting that, and I love that that was the answer because I think that was as you were saying, and I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. So, I think as people are listening and watching this, it's going to resonate because Jack, if it's able to make sense to me and in my brain, I think there's a really good chance it's gonna, because I'm definitely a simple kind of person. So I think this is really
Me
good.
too.
Good on you. So
Thank you.
this next segment here, I want to talk a little bit about going from friction to flow. We hear a lot about flow state, and I think that can be translated into this world and what you do. So I did notice on your profile that you have worked with a lot of major brands like Jaguar, Land Rover, Vodafone. What separates a high performing user journey from a frustrating one?
I do need to caveat as well. Me working with all those companies was as an employee at other companies, not Storytold. I would make no illusions about that. Storytold is just getting started. Eventually, I'd hope we work with those big companies. But yeah, if any of my previous employers are listening, yeah, just so you know, I'm not stealing the copyright. The biggest things that all those companies do and they do well, with the exception of Jaguar, they've had a bit of a meltdown recently, but we'll just ignore that. Every company that you mentioned there, they've always known their identity, they've known their audience, and they've known their core of who they are and what they do. The reason that, say, Citroen is that I have done a logo for Citroen in the past, but the reason Citroen aren't really in the same league as Jaguar, Land Rover, Mercedes, BP, Vodafone, obviously Vodafone, not a car company, but the Citroen used to make like toasters and kettles and things, I'm pretty sure, or it could be Peugeot to be fair. But one of the French makers, they sort of moved around. They made appliances, kettles, like TVs for a little while, all these different things, bicycles, and then they sort of settled on cars. And that's why they've never quite reached that same level of prestige, that same level of brand recognition and notoriety on a global level. If you are great at something and you know what it is and you can communicate that to others and you do it consistently and you build that brand reputation, and you're known for a certain thing, like Dyson. I just have to say the word Dyson and everyone knows it's the best Hoover in the world. That's kind of key. Even though we say Hoover, Henry Hoover was a brand, but we use vacuum cleaner Hoover. I guess that's kind of another example. But just that idea of sticking to what you're great at, being on brand with yourself, and just doubling down on it and being clear with the audience. You need to be known for something. There's this guy I follow on LinkedIn called Matt Gray. He's several million followers. He's very good at what he does, and he constantly is out and about in like lakes and forests and out in nature. But he's also a founder operating person. I'm bigging him up without meaning to here, but he's very good at what he does. And his entire thing resonates with me because it's a tech-based style system, but it's in nature. So there's that disconnect that doesn't really make sense, and like that juxtaposition I quite like. But that stands out. So like Jaguar, for example, their market thing that stood out. They weren't just before Jaguar, had their little wobble a few months ago. They were always known for being the incredible sort of villain car, the British villain car. All around the world, all the baddies drove Jaguars, and that was an amazing market technique because when we saw like Tom Hiddleston and Mark Strong and all these famous sort of villains driving a Jaguar, that made us think, yeah, I want to be a baddie. I want to be a drive like a bad guy. So. It was just a cool thing. Even in James Bond, the baddies in Die Another Day had a Jaguar XK. So that they were really good at what they did, but they positioned it in a way that made sense to their audience. This founder guy, he is really good at what he does with lots of systems and things for business owners. He does it in nature, and I'm originally going back to when I was a kid. That resonates with me because I'm from the Forest of Dean. I literally grew up. You'd walk out the door and turn the corner, and you'd be in a forest, which was magical. So that's my resonance there. That connects, and so if you're a big I've sort of gone off on a tangent, sorry, but like the idea of connecting with people and growing and becoming such a massive brand. You asked about friction, right? From like to avoid that friction, you need to have something that stands you out, but also stay true to who you are. Don't flip flop. Don't be like Citroen or Peugeot. Don't like make a load of different things and muddy who you are. Really be clear on who you are, but position it in a really unique way. I think that I've just got to the crux of all this waffle. So
No, I appreciate you. I enjoy when the guests kind of take me through the whole thought process because I find that very interesting and I enjoy it. So thanks for taking a deeper dive. I think that's really, really good. Kind of in the same vein in this segment here, I guess what I would ask is what are like some behind the scenes process that, most people would be surprised you do as and we use the term UX, and I'm not going to lie, when I saw UX as I was prepping for this, I did have to look it up to see what that meant, and I saw user experience, and then it made sense. So, what are, the behind the scenes process most people would be surprised that you yourself do as a UX expert?
we sort of we have this interesting approach that touches on a lot of different areas. So the biggest part of the user experience collective word, I guess, is that it needs to be a holistic approach. You can't just like look at one thing and go, okay, what's the UX of this particular, what's the experience of this particular part of the website? It has to be everything has to match. So the tone of voice, it needs to be consistent throughout. All the buttons need to be the exact same style for people to recognize that they're buttons, subconsciously at least. You can have like text links that look like buttons, but they need to be clear. They also need to be different enough that you're not muddying the water. You need to have like the same heading styles, and I guess I'm talking more like design related now, but we look at absolutely everything. We also then look at how your brand is communicated on LinkedIn and on your website and anywhere else like Instagram and Facebook. Less important, everything generally goes through LinkedIn these days, and 83% of business to business leads and connections are made through LinkedIn. In fact, this call was, which is really nice. But it's the approach that we take to a general user experience for building websites for LinkedIn. We apply across the board, and the ins and outs of our processes are sort of, we use a bunch of tools like we this might sound a bit shocking because I'm all about authenticity, but we do use GPT, of course, AI to just generate ideas and things. But my general rule of thumb is no more than 10% is AI, and then we build on that. That's the starting point, and then anything else becomes human and is most importantly about us, us as the humans, not us as Storytold. But and also the business owners. And it's important that we help them communicate in their own voice. But the biggest part of the user experience is the user, it's the customer. And we have to make sure that what we're putting out resonates with the audience. So we get users involved. We actually go out and ask them questions. We find out as much as we can about what they need to be able to serve them in a really engaging way. And I think, like I say, it goes back to that chucking stuff over the wall process. A lot of
Mhm.
companies just they sort of put stuff out there and expect results. We like to get into the nitty gritty of like asking questions and analyzing and stuff like that.
No, I think, and I'm glad you brought it up too, because I think it also shows how, and I think we're starting to get away from it a little bit, or at least not get away from it, but I think there is a fear when you think about AI or Chat GPT, things like that. But I think when used properly and in the right context, it actually is an extremely useful tool for people. It's just that you can't let it overtake your own personality and your own voice. And as long as you're
Yeah.
steering clear from that and using it as a tool, not to be you, I think you're in a good spot. So I was glad you mentioned that. This next part of the interview, this segment here, and you touched a little bit on it, but when it comes to, we talked a lot about simplicity. I wanted to talk a little bit about scaling with the story and simplicity. So you help businesses scale without complexity. How do you keep messaging both clear but still remain emotionally compelling?
We tie it all back to your why. We tie everything back to what you do and why you do it. And at the very start of our process, we create this brand discovery document. It's um, ironically, it's not so simple. It's 40 odd pages, but that that document is the sort of the brand bible, if you like. And we get agreement on this with the people we work with. I say clients because that's a universal term, but we call them partners. Our clients are our partners because we're invested in their success. We're not just, we don't just provide a service. We actually go back and forth and constantly make sure that we're helping them along the way. Um, and the biggest thing is throughout that journey is to make sure that everything we do, everything the client does, stays true to their why. As you rightly said, when you grow and you scale, often you can sort of lose sight of what's important, and you can scale in a different way than you expected, and things can sort of go off in a tangent. We want to make sure that we're kind of always questioning that why, making sure that everything you're doing ties back to who you are, and most importantly, making sure that you don't have a wobbly and go, okay, so we're really good at doing cars for British people and all over the world, and all of a sudden, like, we're going to change our market to luxury Beverly Hills style influencers, and make a really like ridiculous car. The Jaguar thing is it's a new move that makes no sense at all. And I think they've sold a total of like 70 cars, and they previously sold totals of several hundreds of thousands, and it's just bonkers. So, yeah, a really, really good case study in what not to do. They've strayed too far away from their why. They've alienated their existing customers, and they are not going to get any new customers because why would those people they're now trying to target want a brand that's associated with all the stuff from the past? And why would all the people from the past who really valued this brand, why would they want the new stuff? Stay true to who you are, and stay true to your why. And that's my biggest advice.
And Jack, I have to thank you too, and I'll probably end up using this with people on my team. But a new phrase I learned today is having a wobbly. I love that. I'm going to be using that, and I'm sure originally people will look at me and say, what is that?" I learned it from Jack. That's yeah, I like that. So thanks. So I mentioned my own work and that and that I am a creative kind of person. And I always run into this. So I want to ask you now, when it comes to your clients, how do you balance that data-driven strategy, which I think is super critical in so many ways, but how do you get it to make sure it's still balancing the creative storytelling without taking away from it?
It's a really interesting. point. Sometimes people can go too heavy on the data, and they can then like try and do what they think the data wants, what they think the algorithm wants, and they can lose sight of their creativity and just be like, but I need to do it this way because that's what the data demands. And you're like, well, you can, but then you lose sight of your soul, you lose your why, and you lose touch with yourself. I always ask silly questions to bring it back to like someone's why. So if someone like a client is struggling with being creative and they're not sure what to do, and also if their stories that they're telling and that we're writing for them end up becoming more repetitive and stagnant, we kind of get back on track with a simple question like, if your business was a vehicle, what would it be? And then that spawns a whole load of reactions. One lady that we worked with up in Scotland, she said a cruise ship because, and she runs a system where you pay a membership for what you do, what she does, sorry. And once you're a member, you get access to all these opportunities that you wouldn't have got before. So she said cruise ship straight away because you pay your ticket. Once you're on board, you can go anywhere, you can do anything. You see exotic locations that you wouldn't have otherwise seen. You have access to all these shops that are on board the ship that you wouldn't have seen. And I thought, perfect example. Another guy, a marketing agency that we worked with in London, and again, these examples aren't from my 9 to 5 jobs in the past. These are within the last 6 months as Storytold. This marketing guy, I asked him, and he said, an ice cream truck. If my business was a vehicle, it would be an ice cream truck. I was like, I laughed and said, why? Because everything that we do, we should have people lining up around the block. They should be coming for miles to come and get our delicious results, and we should be fun. Everyone loves the sort of the music, the jingle of an ice cream truck. You run out onto the street, your kids line up for miles, and it's this idea that like we want that to be who we are, and we want to communicate that in a really authentic way. So once we talked about that, and the guy, he's also called Jack, said, he said, I want to communicate like that. That then refreshed everything. We then put all of our sort of data to one side, knowing, okay, great, this is the data. Everything we do can support that, but we can't get lost in it. We've got to go back to the creativity, and we started communicating like that. It was wonderful, really nice process.
I like that. And when you mentioned that, I start laughing in my brain because I was thinking my podcast, what would it be? What kind of vehicle? I don't know why minivan was the first thing that popped into my brain. I guess all my kids are adults now, but I guess I'm still in parent mode. So I went right away to minivan.
Perfect.
Um,
I mean, can I ask you follow-ups? Yeah, like what does like if you were to relate that to the podcast, what would it encompass?
Honestly, when I think about it, it's that I want to have plenty of room to bring as many people who want to be along for the ride, and that's
Perfect.
what I said there, though, is is important to me, right? I want people who want to be along for the ride, right? If you don't want to be along for the ride, that's okay. I'm good with that, right? But yeah, that's interesting.
Brilliant.
This one I think is kind of fun to me, honestly, because I know I would have so much trouble with this on my own. But what's the difference between a homepage that sells and one that looks cool? Because listen, and this is why I'm not in your business, because to me, I want it to look cool, but I would have no clue on if it's working. So what's the difference?
The difference is all in the language, the messaging, and how you communicate. The you can have the coolest homepage in the world, and this is why about 12 years ago, I've been in my career for 15 years now, and 12 years ago I realised quite early on, I was lucky enough to realise that it doesn't matter how good it looks, it doesn't matter how shiny and how bright it is, if it doesn't tell the right message, and it doesn't, nowadays we know if it doesn't tell the right story, but ultimately underlying the story is the message you want to tell to people. And it's if it's just surface level, people can see right through it, especially now with AI. Like, excuse me, I need to blow my nose. If it's surface level with AI, everyone can just sort of see through the fluff. And nowadays, if it's too shiny, too polished, too pretty, we instantly think it's fake. because like DALI and Adobe Firefly, you can just type in a bunch of stuff and get a beautiful image that's like, wow, that's incredible, but very fake. I did a post on LinkedIn recently. I had a couple of images side by side, and I said, which one is AI? And people genuinely couldn't tell. There was a real human, a guy in a purple suit, and a boy in a hoodie, and no one could tell which one was the AI one. The trick was they were both AI. But ultimately, everyone was like, "I think the one on the left is human. No, I think the one on the right." And they would. It was so beautifully curated that everyone thought they were real, but they weren't sure. And that's the problem with a lot of websites. If you make it really pretty, but your messaging is crap underneath, then people can tell. So you need to even just ditch the prettiness, make it a little bit more authentic. I'm going to use that word again, but yeah, it needs to be resonant to who you are, and you need to communicate in a really honest way, even if it's not as pretty as it could be.
Jack, that actually got me thinking too when I first started out doing the podcast. I spent so much time after each episode literally editing out for my own speech every delay and all right, I would edit it out. Good friend of mine finally said to me, and this is 3 years ago, he said, "Can I just give you some advice?" I said, "Sure, be glad." He said, "Stop." He said, "That's not real. That's not you." He's like, people that are going to listen to this, they want rough around the edges. They want to hear the flubs, and they want to know that you are who you say you are, just some guy in your little basement studio trying to have conversations with people. And it was the greatest advice I got, because I don't think I could have went on for as long as I have with this if I was
Yeah.
putting that much time in editing. So now it's raw, pretty much uncut, and I just let it go. But yeah, it really translates. What you said really resonated with me. So yeah, I could see how that would be the same with, with the website.
And like at the end of this podcast, for example, I could have asked you to just edit that bit out, and I was like fiddling with my nose, but I won't. We'll leave it in because it's real. So
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah, it's I think we need to get back to that more. All right, a couple more little questions here that I wanted to put in this segment, really about some of life lessons and lessons you've learned throughout your career. Um, First, I want to ask, and you just mentioned it a little bit, how long you've been doing this. So, in for as long as you've been doing this, what's changed the most in how people interact with digital brands?
I think the biggest shift in like behavior online is generally just a downward trend of trust. People are more and more distrustful of what they see online because I need to probably do a graph or an infographic about this, but as sort of the noise increases, trust sort of declines. That was a terrible graph, but you get the idea. And there's this theory that yeah, when we're oversaturated, when there's too much going on, and again, everyone and their dog now can play with an AI tool. Um, I'd love to see a dog do that, but it's going to get to that point. But I think as everyone just messes around with these tools, we don't know what's real anymore. We're struggling to you've got it on your screen to believe in what's important, and that's changed a lot since when I was 2012 starting, well, really 3 years into my journey. It feels like a lifetime ago, but it's actually not that long, 13 of almost years. We used to just design stuff that looked nice and people would believe it, and that was that. And then again, it was all surface level. But the biggest change for me, at least, has been this whole journey into understanding what's important. Design is nice, design is fine, and I have a designer on my team, and she's wonderful. But also, design isn't the most important thing. It's that, and even writing. I have a writer on my team. Writing isn't the most important thing. It's the combination of the two, and it has to be tied together with the glue of the person's why they do it, their purpose. Because without that, it all falls apart. Um, yeah, I can't quite remember the wording of your question, but hopefully that answers it.
No, it did. And Well, two things, and I'll tell you this first. You mentioned about you would love to see a dog do that. I'll have to find the video, but if I find it, I'll send it to you. I have a German Shepherd who
Good
loves
dog.
ice cubes.
Oh,
And
amazing.
we have on video that he figured out, we have to lock it now. He figured out how to hit the thing on the ice machine to one day we heard the noise and he was hitting the handle and the ice was just flowing out of the refrigerator. So I
Amazing.
digress, but it just reminded me of that. And just the next thing I want to say though is and I mean this, it's not because I'm interviewing you right now, but a true compliment. I noticed throughout this interview and especially during that question, you kind of get this look about you that resonates with me of your authenticity. And I know if I was in the process of looking for someone to help me with this, for me, I know at least the way I would want to be involved with people, that's what stands out to me the most is you talk a lot about authenticity, but Jack, I really see the authenticity just when you talk about this topic and you really believe what you're saying and it's really refreshing and it's a kudos to you for that. I just wanted to add that right there for you. Really good
That,
stuff.
very kind, thank you. I would be, especially on a topic about authenticity, if I was being fake about it, it just would be the worst thing in the world. So,
You are
no, I
definitely not.
genuinely, thank you. I
Yeah,
genuinely believe everyone should communicate more real online because I think I'm passionate about it because I'm sick of it. Like I'm sick of all the fakeness, the AI, the people putting out what they think people want to hear, and like I'm ignoring, and it's all just profit driven and it's all crass. And if you just start from the base of right, who am I as a person? What's important to me, and how can that help other people? As soon as you land on that point and you go forward from there, you're going to be in a good spot. So yeah, it's really important.
yeah. Now after that I feel bad even asking this question because I think this could be a
Please.
little like take the mood down a little bit, but I'm going to ask it. What's the hardest lesson you've had to learn as both a consultant and probably now as a business owner?
Okay, two separate ones. As a consultant, the hardest one I've had to learn is a personal one, and it's that you can't trust everyone you think you can trust. I was in a difficult situation, 2018. I very much doubt he'll be watching this, and if he is, then he'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But I was in a company in Cardiff, CTO, Chief Technical Officer of the company there, really nice guy. I was brought on as an employee, and oh, sorry, 2015, I was brought on as an employee in this company. And then 3 years later, when I left to go solo, he, at his new company, invited me along. He was like, "Well, Jack, I really enjoyed working with you. You're a great designer. Do you want to come and be part of my new startup?" So I was, and it was great for a while. Um, Purely down to this guy's ego and his worries that I was progressing too quickly, and that I was trying to do all I wanted to do was help the company, and I was doing quite a lot of things, maybe even stepping on some toes, but I was just trying to help the company grow and like designing a bunch of stuff outside of my remit. And I may have pushed too far with a bunch of design stuff, but ultimately it was all to help the company grow. It wasn't for personal glory or anything. Um, this guy promised me, he suggested that I could become creative director, which was great. Created a whole sort of career like plan. Again, at the time I didn't know it was all to manipulate and to make me fall down this trap. I then signed a contract because of all these things, and within 2 weeks of me signing the contract, he then pulled the rug out from under me, and it was just so that he could fire me in an easier way after I'd signed the contract rather than my freelance contract that I was on at the time. So then he fired me. But the funniest thing is, he didn't even have the guts to do it himself. He had told the CEO that I needed to go because he was threatened by me advancing and all of this stuff. Um, and yeah, she then lovely, absolutely incredible lady. I have no qualm with her at all. But she told me everything that had been going on, and that he wasn't happy with my performance. And I was like, well, why is he not here? She said he's left for the day. He didn't want to be here for this. So he was not only insecure, he was also a coward, and he got rid of me, but he didn't even have the guts to get rid of me himself. He got the wonderful leader of the company to do it. And that was it. And then, I was out the door, but he couldn't face me himself. That was the hardest part. Yeah, the personal lesson, don't, if someone promises you the world and says you're going to be like, creative director and all of this, and if, just don't trust everyone that you hear. If someone is being honest with you and saying, look, right now, where you're at, there's a chance you could make this one day, but right now you need to improve your skills, I would respect them a hell of a lot more than someone promising me the world and, then pulling the rug out. But that was all just, all based on his ego, his insecurities. It was a tough lesson to learn. And I think now I'm running my own company, I will do, because I've been burnt by that before, I will do everything in my power to make sure that my team feel respected, know that they've got a place, they've got a voice, they can share their concerns with me. And I'm never, ever going to treat anyone like that, because that's just horrendous. So, yeah. I know that I've not even told the whole story there, but hopefully that's enough of a vibe to.
Yeah, I told you, I knew. I was like, we had just had such a nice
Yeah,
vibe going, and then I asked that question. So yeah, there's your graph again.
exactly.
Let's see if I can
But it's
go
all
up
good.
now for the
It's
graph.
raw. It's honest.
Um, I would definitely different careers, but I have a saying that I share with people I work with, and it reminded me of this, but I always tell them that trust is our currency, and if you lose that, you lose so much. So it reminded me of that, and it definitely is true. I think in any area, any industry, trust is our currency. So
For
well,
sure.
last thing I want to ask here, before it's the last thing before I do this new segment I call rapid fire, but last official question. If for someone just starting out, and I know there's probably tons of things, but what would be your best, most simple advice for someone who is trying to build a brand that actually connects?
Think back to what they wanted to do as a child. Think back to who you wanted to be as an adult, where you are now as an adult, and see if there's a disconnect. Because, Simon Sinek said this, and he was absolutely spot on from a psychological perspective. Where our main purpose in life, our core, our who we want to be, generally is formed between like 8 and 14 years old. Think back to that period in your life, and if space cowboy, for me at least, is a bit out of the way, probably not going to achieve that. Olympic swimmer or pole vaulter or marathon runner, again, way to beyond the realm of possibility. But again, another famous quote, but Earl Nightingale once said that our decisions, our beliefs are. No, sorry, what was it? I'm gonna butcher the quote, but I'm gonna try and get it right. He said, "Our abilities are governed by our desires." So if you want something, if you believe you can do something, it's not because it's just a pipe dream and you're never going to get there. It actually is the basis of what you're able to do. So chase it, follow that. If you are creating a business to help people in a certain way, then keep it going, but make sure it relates to you as a person. Tie it back to who you are, and then again, you won't have that weird disconnect that this guy who had a lot of issues had. You'll be able to build a business that's truly resonant with who you are and what you want, and you'll attract more people to you. I'm genuinely so grateful, and this wouldn't have happened without me being authentic and being true to who I am. If I could have just stayed in a 9 to 5 job I had before this time last year, I was in the best job I've ever had. It was a 9 to 5. The people were incredible. The pay was average, but the people, it doesn't matter. The people were incredible. The job itself was wonderful. I would go along and find so much meaning in my work. But even so, there was this thing sort of tugging me in a different direction, and I was constantly being pulled towards self-employment and doing this own thing, and of course, Storytold.
Mhm.
I need to get a sign up somewhere, but Like I've got this sort of deep desire and belief that what I can do can help others. So if you have that within you, if there's even like a 10% of your brain that's going, I'm stuck, but I really want to go in this direction, but there's and then but there's all these other reasons I can't do it. Just take it back to basics. Put those reasons to one side and say, but what if I did do that thing? What if I did actually chase that dream? You know, instead of thinking of all the negatives that could stop you doing something, put them all to one side and just go, what if it succeeds? And then you can build on that and chase that thing, because I guarantee you that thing where your passion is, that will help so many more people than whatever the hell you're doing right now.
And there you go, graph upward. Good job.
Exactly.
Nice. I'll add this to that. It's funny that again, it made me think of something when you were saying about think back to when you were a child and what the hell you're doing now. And I kind of was like, well, I don't think I ever wanted to be in data when I was a child. But then I thought about the podcast and my brand, and it reminded me that my dream as a child was I wanted to be a cartoonist. And now I think about my logo, my images, and I am obviously into that kind of cartoonish kind of thing. But yeah, it's all true now. Good stuff, Jack.
That's
So
brilliant.
I've been doing this now with the relaunch, but I like asking a few rapid fire questions, kind of, first thing you think of kind of deal. I have four of those. Curious to see how you would answer these. So we'll
Sure.
start with this. What was the favorite website you've ever worked on?
My favorite website. Oh, great question. Is there a timer counting down? I
No
can't think of
pressure.
one. Favorite website I've ever worked on. Let's think. Buckley School in Los Angeles, straight away. And again, I need to caveat this wasn't the Storytold website. All the elements are there, and everything that we do in Storytold is on the Buckley website. But this was at my previous company, Interactive Schools, and I have no problem telling you their name because they're an incredible company. Yeah, we built a school website. We did the photo shoot. I was over in LA doing that, then it was just incredible. The energy there, the vibe, the kids are just the most creative kids ever, possibly with the exception of Harvard Westlake, but they're also competitors in the same area. Yeah, the website itself tells a story. It's a scroll experience. It's buckley.org, and you just scroll down it and you feel this energy, the community of the school. And I don't even have kids, but if I did, I'd want them to go to Buckley. So yeah, love that.
That's awesome, and I know I'll check that out actually probably within a few minutes after we're done here because now you've piqued my curiosity. No, that's good. This one's kind of fun. What's one homepage sin that drives you crazy?
Pop-ups.
Mm,
Straight away. The worst of them is, well, there's two biggest sins. Is when you first land on a page and before you've built any kind of emotional connection to the website, it then hits you with a get my newsletter. You're like,
mm.
oh, I don't know who you are as a company. I don't know anything about you. Why would I want a newsletter? No, just go away. But the other one is the manipulation one, which is as your mouse moves up to the X and you're about to close or go back to Google, then the pop-up springs up and goes, don't go yet, we've got an offer for you. And it's basically dark behavior to try and trick you into doing something, to coming back. And both of those go counter to my entire belief of being honest, being authentic, like communicating in a really open, heartfelt way. Build the trust. Just have a website that people like. Don't try and manipulate them with pop-ups. That's my piece. You can tell I'm very passionate about that.
And as you were saying it, I don't do what you do, but I hate that. I hate pop-ups. It almost makes me when I see a pop-up on a website, I literally go to find the true X that I can X out of the website. And they're
Yeah,
good at trying to trick me into staying, but I'll usually find how to make my exit. And
for sure.
it reminded me in a way of LinkedIn too, where I get a lot of this on LinkedIn. As soon as they see podcast, I'm getting a connection request. And first thing is, I can help you market your podcast kind of deal. And it's like, I don't even know you at this point. So how, yeah, nah,
Yeah.
really good one. What would you say the most underrated part of the UX, of UX that people overlook?
Uh, it's again that the most underrated part, simplicity. Everyone thinks that sort of the experience of a website needs to be this all singing, all dancing, like fancy thing, and it needs to hook you and engage you, and all these marketing tricks and tactics, but like the pop up saying, "Hey, come back." But the biggest thing is just simple. We're so overwhelmed with information right now, and actually, I might after this call work this into my how I communicate, because yeah, we need to be more simple. We need to be more down to earth and honest and clean and clear. The most overlooked part of any website, and just thinking about the whole user experience as a whole, is keeping it simple. Most people just don't bother, and that's to their detriment.
Yeah, well, I love the whole keep it simple because that gives me hope that I can continue doing things because I'm a simple person. So I have to keep it simple. All right, last thing. Complete this sentence. Great design is
Simplicity. Yeah. Or I would love to say storytelling, but yeah, ultimately maybe the two. You know what? Let's. I'm not even going to ask you to edit this. I'll make these mistakes and then we'll continue. But great design is simplicity through storytelling.
that's I think that's fantastic, honestly, because I love keeping it simple and I enjoy storytelling. So, Jack, I don't think you could have ended it in any better. Uh, and Listen, I've had such a really, truly, I've had a great time speaking with you this morning. Um,
Same.
I've learned a lot. Uh, yeah, I think people are going to get a lot out of this, Jack, and I think what you're doing is really needed, and I think that people would be very lucky to work with you. So I hope that people reach out and connect with you, and there's the chance for you to plug your own website. Where can people get a hold of you to work with you?
Sure, thank you so much. Yeah, storytold.co.uk, or just I'm assuming I'll be like tagged on some kind of thing, maybe on the screen or whatever.
Yeah.
You know that YouTubers always go, "There's a thing there," or I'm not very good at that, but yeah, just storytold.co.uk, or cal.com/storytold, and then you can book a meeting with me directly. But yeah, again, I'm never one to plug or pitch. The whole purpose of Storytold is to get your story told in a really authentic, meaningful way. And again, Charles, I'm so grateful that you've been able to do this for me. Like you're helping me to tell my story, shining the spotlight back on me for a change. Whereas we're so used to helping other business owners to grow their audiences and to make more engaged connections, that it's not about us. Ultimately, we become a silent partner in other people's lives. We become part of their story, and we become their sidekick. They are the hero, and yeah, if you want to be the hero of your own story and you'd like a partner who can help you, then Storytold's your team. I'm going to shout out to, again, shout out, feel like an Oscar speech or something, but um, like my team, I'm so grateful to them every day. We've got Annika, my writer, Joel, my strategist, Tash, my designer, and he wouldn't want me mentioning him because he sits in the background, but Thomas, my accounts guy. Um, so yeah, we're a great team. We've also got Shaney, who's a sort of financial assistant as well. So yeah, just for reference, 6 months ago, I was employed. Well, yeah, 6 months ago, I was employed in my 9 to 5 job. Again, incredible job, but it was just me working as part of a bigger team for this massive agency. Um, if you'd have told me right now, I'd be on a podcast talking about my team, and I am actually the leader of this little company. It's a dream. It's an absolute dream. So yeah, I'm so grateful to be where I am today, and also to have people like Charles reach out to me and help me get my own story told. So thank you very much.
Yeah, Jack, I would just end with this. I think it's, it's about connections, it's about authenticity, and I think it's about passion in what we do. And you obviously have the authenticity, you have the passion. And like I said, I think your team, you called out your team and you feel great and fortunate to have your team. I think they're fortunate to have you also. And I think we end the podcast where we took Jack's graph and we really put the trajectory up. So really, really good stuff. And I am truly, grateful that you took some time today to come on here and speak with me. So yeah, if anybody needs this type of assistance, this type of work, I highly recommend. I'm connected on LinkedIn with Jack, and you can tell just by his LinkedIn that he is extremely well versed and good at what he does. So reach out. So, Jack, thank you again. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you very much.
This has been the Bare Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.